So Lois, I want to start with you. I said without you, if you hadn't laid words down on paper and told this story, we wouldn't be here. And it's a story that, look, we have commandos sneaking in.
I know, look at that.
It's a story that resonates very deeply with people. And I was curious what some of the more surprising reactions are that you've gotten over the years from readers who've seen something in the story, and do they ever see anything that you yourself are surprised to find?
Actually, the most surprising reaction I've gotten over the years, and still get, I won't get it anymore after this movie is out there, is the people who think the boy and the baby are dead at the end of the book. They are not, folks. They're alive and well, and there are 3 more books if you want to read about what happens to them later. But it's clear at the end of this movie that not only are they alive and well, but they have returned a kind of sanity to this community that they've fled.
But why do you think the story connects so deeply with people? There's more to it than just an exciting adventure.
You still asking?
I'm still asking.
Okay.
Or do you disagree?
Do I disagree? No, I think there's a great deal more to it. But interestingly, when I wrote the book, I wrote it just as a story, as an exciting adventure, as you say. It was only afterwards that I realized out of that arises food for thought. A lot of questions are raised. I think the best books raise questions rather than give answers. I think the best books don't have messages because there are different answers to those questions. And so I think that's what the book The Giver does, and it's why teachers like it so much, because it raises those questions for students.
Well said.
Probably a few of you out here had to read it in school.
So Jeff, you star in the film, but you've been pushing this project along for almost 20 years now.
Forever.
Forever. You got interested early on. Tell us about discovering the novel and what it was that inspired you to say, I want to make a movie out of this.
Yeah, originally, I wanted to direct my father, Lloyd Bridges, in a film. Mike Nelson, Sea Hunt fans, yeah. And I wanted to direct him in a film that my kids could see, and they were little kids back in those days. They're all in their 30s now. And so I got myself a catalog of children's books, and I saw this great cover with this grizzled old guy on the cover and the Newbery Award there stamped on the cover. I thought, oh, this could be a good one. Let me pick this book up. Oh, and by the way, I found out later that Lois took that photograph, which I love so much. Anyway, I thought, I'll get this book. This will be a wonderful book to read. And I read it, and it was a terrific children's book, but also I enjoyed it so much as an adult and found the themes, so important, and the poetry of it really, I just love. So I thought, oh, this is going to be an easy one, to get made. But I was mistaken. We tried for, close to 18, 19 years to get it made, and it proved to be difficult, I think, because it was quite controversial. Lois and I, not too long ago, were in Las Vegas at a banned book conference, and the book was banned in many areas, in many places, but also it was taught in many schools. How many of you guys out there read the book in school? It was like mandatory reading. Yeah, huh? Look at that. Isn't that wild? So that controversy, I think, scared some financiers away, but it also inspired me. I said, oh, wow, this, the energy of this thing, being the two poles, people saying, oh, it's too risky, we don't want to show our kids that. And the other ones, oh, yeah, this is the kind of thing we want our kids to learn. So I'm so glad that the Weinstein Company and Walden finally got the courage to put it out.
I have to admit, I don't understand the controversy and why anyone would want to ban this story. Lois, what's the reasoning? What nerve
I've never
does it
actually figured it out myself, because often people take things out of context. There are 2 scenes in the book that would be held up as, this is disgusting, we don't want our children to read this. One is the scene you just saw part of in the little film clip, where the father kills the infant. That's a difficult scene. It's important to the book. And you can understand why people are unnerved by it. The other, not in the movie, is a scene where the boy, 12 in the book, bathes an old woman. So there's the 12-year-old boy with a naked woman in the bathtub.
I loved it when that scene was cut from the film. Lois, I know you were very disappointed because you wanted to play that old woman.
I was going to volunteer to.
And, you know,
It's the only old lady in the movie.
exactly.
I thought I'd be a cameo. At any rate,
You've been waiting 20 years for that. And
And then they cut the film.
finally I'm
would've had
old
to
enough to
release her
play that
then.
old woman, but they cut the scene from the
you
from the
both
movie.
aged into the roles then. As you
We
said,
did, yeah.
your father was your original idea for The
That's
Giver, and you
I
shot.
started to look like that grizzled old guy. I'm
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
like,
You mentioned you shot the photo. We all know that cover. Those who've read the book early on. Now it has the new movie poster
Yeah.
cover. But who was that old man?
The old man, who's long dead, was named Carl Gustav Nelson. He was a painter. And at the time, I was a journalist, a photojournalist, and I had an assignment from a magazine to write an article about him. So I went and spent time with him, photographed him. And I remember when his photograph was floating in my darkroom sink, one of my kids walked past, glanced at it, and said, "Who's that, Moses?" And so I wrote him to thank him for the time we'd spent together, and I told him that. And we corresponded for some years, and he always signed his letters, "Love, Moses." He's gone now, and he was gone when the book was written, so he didn't ever get to see himself as a cover on a book.
The cover boy.
Yeah.
Nikki, you've worked with Jeff for a long time, and this is, as he said, been a project that he's been developing forever. Tell us about the turning point. What was it that happened that finally gave the Giver the green light?
Well, in everything, there's always luck and timing. And, you know, Jeff's continual persistence as we went through this, and I don't feel old enough to have been involved in this for 17 years, but clearly it's been quite a journey. And I think there all of a sudden became an appetite, a real appetite for this whole genre of dystopian fiction that, you know, Lois, I always call her the birth mother of this whole genre of literature that's out there right now. And so it was a combination of timing that finally was right, and Lois's continual faith in us and not giving up, and then a vision for how we could take this book and make it into this amazing piece that has action and is interesting and would affect all ages. So we were really excited with Walden and Weinstein are the perfect combination of companies to come together to do it.
So that's interesting. So some of the novels that were inspired by The Giver ended up clearing the path for The Giver to go to the screen.
It happens that way sometimes.
Interesting, yeah, symbiotic relationship. Can you talk about the casting of the film and about an actress who you saw in the footage but is not here, Meryl Streep, as the elder, chief elder.
I mean, our chief elder too. I mean, it was to have, you know, the two top actors of our generation, you know, acting together. And Jeff, you and Meryl had never acted together before, right?
Meryl's like a soccer mom.
Right.
But our kids played soccer together, so I knew her, but I had never worked with her before, and it was, you know, a real thrill.
And you have a number of scenes together, especially at the end, where you two go head to head.
Oh, it's good. They go head to head. It's
Yeah.
really good. And we would just sit on set and watch the two of them go, and everybody just stopped. I mean, it was amazing, right? I mean, just watching the two of them and the clash of their two ideologies at the end, and it just builds, and the music's pumping, and it's fantastic. So Meryl's, she's one of a kind.
Jeff, do you
Can I just add something from?
Sure, absolutely.
I want to say this happens rarely, but I realized after seeing what I've seen of the work, I haven't seen the total film yet. I realized I wanted to go back and rewrite the book, and I wanted to make the role of the chief elder into what it is, with Meryl Streep playing the role. Because in the book, it's a small role, and the personality of the chief elder is not displayed. She makes it into something so complex and so fascinating. And she is really the political leader, and Jeff the spiritual leader, and the conflict between them, which is not, unfortunately, in the book. I wish I could go back and put it
Let's
there.
talk about what happened with this character, because she's not a traditional villain. She's not out to do evil. She really believes,
She believes it.
in the mission that they've set forth to clear suffering away from people.
It's actually the same thing that happens when people try to ban the book. They're not evil people. They're people who care about their children and want to protect their children. I always try to remember that when they write me letters saying Jesus would be ashamed of you. I think this is a good person who wants to protect her child. And same thing with this role for Meryl.
And how wonderful, a powerful woman running the society. Love that too, right?
Made her evil, though, sort of.
She's not evil.
Not evil.
She's got a strong point of
Just
view.
stern. Stern.
Different things.
So, Brenton, you've had a pretty big year. Maleficent, with Angelina Jolie was in that, and Elle Fanning, and now you're in The Giver with another elder statesman, Jeff Bridges. Can you tell us about just moving from, you shot Maleficent first and then The Giver, or sometimes these get, the shooting gets mixed up and the film that you shot last doesn't always come out first. So what order was it? Did you go right from Maleficent into The Giver?
Let me think, bro. Maleficent was a long time ago. That was maybe 3 years ago.
Wow.
This was a quick turnaround, this film. From shooting it to it coming out, it was less than a year, which is crazy. Maleficent, I think it took 2.5 years to come out. And so it's cool to be here this year, to watch them all come to life, because you know, life on set is very different and very monotonous, not monotonous, but it's kind of like Groundhog Day. You know, you go to set, you do a different scene, and then you're in the desert getting chased by a snake or something. But yeah, it's interesting. This whole experience is cool, and it'd be really, really cool to see what you guys think of the movie.
Was there a particular scene in The Giver that you were most looking forward to shooting? Like, just couldn't wait to get to that particular part in the script?
I mean, I was really excited to...
Don't touch me, man.
You touched me, bro. You touched me. It's really...
You can touch
Well,
me.
see,
Not nice in real life.
Lois wasn't as rude to me as you were.
He can touch me all he wants.
What did you say? What did you say, Lois?
I said he can touch me all he wants.
She's ready for her bath.
Can't you guys read this sign that says, please be aware that there are many members of our audience that are under 18 years of age. We're getting a little racy here.
Now who's the chief elder, Jeff? Protect the children. So, Odeya, you portray Fiona, and in the story, she's much younger than you actually are. What do you think adding a few years to the character for the purpose of the film actually does to maybe change the perspective of her, or does it not at all?
I think it does, because in the book, when Jonas starts to develop feelings, he starts to develop feelings for Fiona, and it's kind of a crush, because it's, you know, feelings can only go like to an extent as a 12-year-old, but when you're 16, 17, I think it's much more severe, and when he falls in love with her, he realizes how cruel this society actually is, so it makes the injections and the community seem even more harsh.
Lois said earlier that the book, she thinks the book makes a connection because it raises questions that people have. I guess it raises questions, it makes you feel not so alone that you're asking the same questions. Well, what connection did you make with the book when you first read it?
I think for me, it just really hit me of how incredible life is and how much we have to cherish certain moments, a lot of memories that Jonas receives, and holidays, and just things like being warm and being cold and things that we take for granted, and she kind of put that message in subtly. And a lot of times as kids, our parents always tell us, appreciate this moment, because we're trying to grow up and we're not really realizing how good things are. And it's easier said than done. And this book really hits you. It's much different.
I think I just said that to you on the stairs.
And Brendan, how about you?
Yeah, she was like, be happy, smile, don't be nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm taking your advice.
Brendan, what kind of feelings did the story stir in you when you first laid eyes on it?
I guess I just really connected with Jonas. I read the screenplay before the book, and I guess I was really attracted to his journey and how he finds imperative moments throughout the story. He learns such deep, visceral emotions from the giver, and that kind of teaches him to trust his instincts and follow his heart. Yeah.
And I always felt like any kind of pain or suffering, you want to take those sharp edges, take those jagged edges off of your life if you can. But that leads to kind of a dull existence, doesn't it? Sort of a...
Yeah. The price of comfort, how much we're willing to pay to be comfortable, and that can also that can often backfire on us. A lot of the richness in life comes out of the struggle and the suffering.
One of the things that people sometimes don't notice right away is that in this world where Jonas lives, among the things they've lost are art and music and literature. And the reason for that is that those things always arise out of pain. And once they've obliterated the painful part of life, they've lost a very great deal.
Yeah, and love too, that great song, love hurts,
Right.
Yeah.
It does sometimes, but look what else it does.
But I also think that there's probably not a person in this room who at one point in their life didn't say, I'd give it all up if it could just be easy. I'd give it all up. And that's really the question that the movie asks. I mean, I think we've all gone through times where it's like, so Meryl's argument's a real argument. That's what makes the book exciting. That's what makes the movie exciting, too.
Absolutely. Well, let's open it up to the audience. You guys have some questions for this bunch? Let's take a few questions from the audience. And if you're the shy type who's not likely to get up out of your seat and go to the microphone and you want to ask something, tweet me a message. My Twitter handle is my last name, @BREZNICAN, and I'll ask it for you. So for the shy persons out there, they can get their question asked too. But let's take a question from the microphone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
I found out at the Silly Book Fair that Jonas wasn't dead because you said in Gathering Blue he survives. Are you gonna do a Gathering Blue movie?
Good question. Will there be a sequel to The Giver following your other books?
I don't know that. There's been talk of it, but I think probably that decision will wait until we see how the audience reacts to this movie. It would be fun to embark on a new one, but I don't think that decision will be made for a while.
Any other questions? Oh, your mic's not on.
Oh, tell the people who want to ban your book to go live in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 society.
Yeah. Next question.
Hi, my name's Ada, and this is a question for Louis Laurie. And I was wondering, would you consider your book a dystopian when you wrote it? And also, how do you think other dystopian worlds compare since you wrote the book?
I assume that question is for me, yeah. I don't tend to think in that kind of terms when I write a book. I began to create a story. A character appears to me. I move him through a journey that he has to make. And it wasn't until I was fairly far along in the book that I realized this book was going to have to be set in the future. I also, of course, began to realize, though I hadn't really known this at first, that the place where he lives is not such a wonderful place. I began to create a place that seemed pretty neat to me. I would have liked to live there. But then, of course, as it became more complicated, it then turns into what is called a dystopia, a place that appears on the surface to be wonderful, and you turn the rock over, and there's all the ugly stuff underneath. But that wasn't on my mind. A genre, dystopian, was not on my mind. And it was only later that, of course, people began to call the book that, and then all of these many, many other dystopian novels began to appear in the years after The Giver.
Excellent. So we have a question from the audience. Gretchen asks through Twitter, for Lois, how hard was it to get The Giver published?
It was not difficult because I'd been doing this work for a very long time, and I had probably published 20 books before The Giver. I'd had the same publisher, the same editor for all of those books. So when I finished writing The Giver, I simply gave the manuscript to that editor. It was unlike my other books. He was surprised by it, and therefore he showed it to other editors at the publishing company. And together they came to the decision to publish it. But because I had a track record, it wasn't difficult to get it published.
Next question here from the microphone.
Whoa. Hi.
You're on.
Oh, sorry. My name is Renate. This question is for Lois Lowry. I read all of your books and I love your series. The question is for the fourth book, Son. Where did you get your inspiration for the character Trademaster?
He appears in an earlier book, the third of the series. Trademaster is a truly evil guy. He's the personification of evil. You know, I'm trying to think back, and I don't want to talk too much about the other books because, hey guys, we're here for the movie, and the other books aren't movies yet. So that was just a character who appeared to me when I was writing the third book and needed a villain, and there he was. And he also represents a villainous part of all of our lives. He's the guy who appears and says, you want whatever, what will you trade for it? And people begin to give away important parts of themselves in order to get stuff. And isn't that what all of us do from time to time? We make those terrible compromises. So that's where he came from us and from the people we know.
So JB from the audience asks, Lois, are any of the memories that The Giver gives to Jonas things that were special to you in your real life?
Oh, I can answer that also, but we should ask the other people as well, because of course all of our memories are different. It was the role of the director, I suppose, more than anybody else, and he unfortunately isn't here, who put together the montage of memories, which is beautifully done in the film. I contributed only one, and maybe it would have come to him anyway, but I emailed him at one point when I'd seen an early version of it, and I said, you ought to have some scene from the world of Islam in there, and so it's now there. But there's just wonderful scenes of every bit of emotion-filled experience that we've all seen and had in our lives. Nikki, can you talk a little bit about how those were decided upon and how they were put together?
Well, we started really big, and then we wanted to go small, because at the end of the day, it's like, what are the things, what does being alive really mean to you? And it was, you know, there was a lot for us. The set was a really very happy place. I mean, these guys are all musical. There was a night with these three over here that they're playing guitar and she sings, and all of that sort of brought to us kind of the essence of what it's about. So, I mean, I think, you know, trying to show humanity, music, living, tears, happiness. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, we had a great time.
That was fun,
Brent,
right?
Yeah, we jammed a lot of music, and we had Taylor Swift on board. You know, between the setups, we'd get out the guitar.
How did she get involved in the movie? And in fact, Maddie from the audience asked that question, so she brought it up. How did Taylor Swift?
That was Harvey, I think.
We actually wrote the character as a piano-playing character before Taylor was cast, and the executives from the Weinstein Company were at one of her shows and had this crazy idea. I said maybe this would make sense, and talked to her about it, and she came on board, and she came down. We were all in South Africa, which is an amazing place. You should all go when you have a chance. And she came down to South Africa and was there and played with us for a while, right?
Yeah.
In the book, that character is talked about and described, but she's already gone by the time the book begins. In the movie, given the magic of technology, they're able to, you can see her, and she reappears to the giver because he's she's very special to him.
You with the microphone, let's hear your question.
Hi. I just want to say I love you. You're an amazing writer, and I've read a bunch of your books. But you had mentioned that you wanted to go back and change the chief elder, like in your book. Is there anything else in your book that you would like to go back and change? Any of them, if you could?
You know, after I write a book, every book I've written, there are things that I wish I had done better. I wonder if the actors would like to redo certain scenes.
All the time.
All the time, yeah.
Every time,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. But as far as The Giver is concerned, and having seen parts of the movie, I haven't seen the whole thing yet, it was that particular thing that I would like to go back and reinsert or insert into the novel. I can't think of anything else in particular, except that, as you know, and as you can see from the actors here, the kids are slightly older in the movie. I don't know that I'd like to go back and rewrite the book and make the kids older. I think it works them being 12. And I'm not sure why the decision was made to make them older, but it was a concern of mine that that was happening. And then the first time I saw the beginning of the movie, which I think you saw here today, the children, the kids, the teenagers on their bikes, I thought, oh, yeah, it works, because the boy, and you see him close up in the opening of the film, right away you see that he is the same as the 12-year-old boy in that he's young, he's curious, he's intelligent, he's vulnerable, and so it doesn't matter that he's a few years older. It works quite well.
Next question.
Hello. My question's for the dude. Sorry. I know you worked very heavily on this movie. You've been working on it for more than 10 years, right? You even had a vision for who the giver was, but instead you were casted as yourself. So my question is, when you were making the character, did you stick to source material, or was it more based on the new script, the new style of the movie?
Yeah, I was so enamored of the book. I was trying always go back to the book. It's wonderful to make a film that's based on a book, because scripts are very condensed and have very little description. And with a book, you can really get inside the character. So I would constantly reference the book. When we'd have a scene to shoot, the next day, that night, I would look and see where it was in the book, to see, how that would, inform the scene.
So Lala, who tweets under the handle Brianna Pancakes, says, she just thought that was interesting. She asked Brenton and Odea, as young actors starring in this film, what advice do you have for other up-and-coming young performers?
I would say for any film or theatre gig you get or do, just go in with an open heart and be willing to try things and throw ideas out, and be fearless in your approach. That's one of the things that Taylor came in with, into quite a stressful environment where we're shooting very quickly. She came in very fearless and throwing ideas out and taking things on, and I think that's just the best way to approach anything really creative. Is just put yourself out there and try and commit to things,
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, I think just take every opportunity you have. I came from Haifa, Israel, and lived in Alabama for 2 years, and never think that I'd be up here after only acting for such a short amount of time. And I think, so I'm saying it is possible, and you should do plays at school, write your own plays, try to, go see as many movies as you can, do everything you can, because this is possible, because I'm living it right now.
Can I answer?
Yeah, you can answer that too, Jeff.
Also, I think, we got back to that. We have these, we have cell phones, and geez, you guys can make your own movies, Just make a movie, pull a Rocky, you know, like Sylvester Stallone did.
That's how I make mine.
What's that? You did that?
iMovie, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and put that in. Remember my brother, Bo, when I was starting out, Bo's about 8 years older than I am, and he came up with this great idea. You know, as an actor, you're looking for places, you know, where I might do my stuff, you know, and so Bo came up with this idea to rent a flatbed truck, and we would work up some scenes, and then we would pull into a supermarket. And our father taught us how to fake fight, you know, stage fight, and we would stage this fight with each other, and the crowd would, you know, come around, and we'd say, "No, we're kidding, it's a show." And we'd jump up on the back of this truck, and we'd do our scenes until the cops would come. And then we'd try to improv the cops like they were part of the show. They didn't do that at all, you know, and they would still threaten us, and then we'd say, "Okay, we're going," and we'd go to the next supermarket, and we played the supermarket circuit.
Jeff Bridges' advice for how to get arrested as a young actor. Yeah. How to get arrested in Hollywood.
Jeff, you did a video with Bo, too, of The Giver, right? When you first got involved?
Actually, not with Bo, but when I first wanted my father to be in this film, I thought, well, let's read the book. So I got my buddy Bud Cort. Do you guys know who Bud Cort is? Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude, yeah.
And this is, you know, back, you know, 18, 19 years ago. And so I asked him to narrate the story. My dear nephew, who is here somewhere at Comic-Con. He works now for Universal, but at the time he was about 10 years old. He played Jonas, he played your part. My father was the giver, and we have this document somewhere in some garage, and I'm hoping that we will find it by the time we're putting the DVD together to be an extra thing. Oh, another thing, you know, just mentioning the book, I remember it was one of the first things we did. I thought it would be helpful. We gathered the cast together and we read the book together out loud. I don't know, did you know that, Lois, that we did that?
I think you've told me.
Yeah, and that was so, it was really helpful. You know, get everybody on the same, same idea.
Had you made the film with your father, Lloyd Bridges, as the giver, would you have taken a role in the film as well? Might you have played the Alexander Skarsgård character of the father?
No, my plan was I was gonna direct it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Young lady here at the microphone.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and this question's for Lois Lowry. What inspired the idea of having your outsider be chosen by the community and have it being considered an honor?
You want to repeat that?
Can you repeat what you're...
No, I just was hoping you would repeat it. I sort of didn't hear the second half.
Let her say this.
Okay.
I was looking at tweets. Some good questions, though.
Yeah. What inspired your idea of having the outsider be chosen by the community itself and having it be considered an honor?
Boy, it's always hard to be asked what inspired a particular thing when a book is 20 years old, because then I have to try to go back into my mind 20 years ago, and that's hard. I will say, though, that I think it's fair to say that every book, the main character, the protagonist, male or female of every book, at least every book by me, is usually an outsider. One of the things they have to fight against, and I bet everybody in this room, because of this particular convention and who you are, and some of you are in costumes, you probably think of yourself as outsiders, I would guess. I always have. And so it feels natural to me to project myself, my mind, my thoughts into that of an individual who is set apart in some fashion. It makes for a more interesting character, I think, if nothing else.
Next question from the mic.
Hello. My question's for Miss Lowry. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I read the book when I was so young. I just started crying when the trailer played. So. You've been such an inspiration, and my question is for you. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier. When you did the book to screen adaptation, were there any scenes that you really wanted in the movie
a point that you wanted people to get out of it, or any message? Like, what did you want people, or what would you want people to come away with it?
Gosh, I think I said earlier that I think the best books and probably the best movies raise questions, and that the different people who read or see a book or a movie probably have their individual answers to those questions. I don't feel as though it's my role to provide answers, but I think it's exhilarating to provide questions.
Awesome. But Lance from the audience, he asks, I guess what would be a follow-up to that, what kind of input did you have on the film? Not necessarily telling what answers to provide, but what kind of guidance did you give to Jeff as a producer, and Nikki as a producer, and Philip as a director, or any of the actors?
I didn't provide any guidance at all to any of them because they're all professionals who are very good at what they do. But I did occasionally provide little details. Philip, the director, is an email addict, would you say?
Addict.
And also, he seems never to sleep, so 24 hours a day, he's sending emails to all of us. And beginning way back a year ago, he began emailing me with small questions. As an example, what should the boys' bedroom look like? Clearly, they were beginning to think about set design. What should Jonas's bedroom look like? Probably the time on his email was 2 a.m., but I would have gotten it the next morning. And so I wrote back and I said it would be very stark. It would be functional. There would be a bed, someplace to keep his clothes. There would be a desk for him to do his homework, but there wouldn't be anything decorative. If you want anything to hang on the walls, probably it should be something educational. Maybe, I suggested, a poster showing the periodic table of elements, okay? Which he would be studying, of course, in school. I later mentioned that to my then 12-year-old grandson, that this is how I described the boys' bedroom. My grandson had read the book, and my grandson said, "This book is set when? 50 years from now?" And I said, "Well, yeah, perhaps." And he said, "Well, there's not going to be any more helium by then." Who knew? My 12-year-old grandson. And he said, "And also, there will be new elements that haven't been discovered yet." I said, "Well, tough. If you're under 18 years of age, close your ears. Tough shit," I said. And actually, I've forgotten now. I was in Cape Town. I did look at the set for the boys' bedroom, but it was dark. We had to use a flashlight because the scenes had already been shot there. So I don't remember if that was on the, do you remember anything on the wall of the bedroom?
I honestly don't.
It was a tree, I think.
Yeah, it's the tree.
Now, I heard that you, during the ADR sessions, when we were working on the sound, that you gave Meryl Streep some line readings on how to perform certain lines.
This is a true story.
Is that true?
It's a true story.
Were you schooling Meryl Streep in how to act, Lois?
Just a little bit.
I was. This is in a studio in New York, and she's recording, I don't know the terminology, but she's recording some dialogue. And there's a scene at the end, I don't believe this was part of the clip here, but she says to Jeff, who was not there, and the scene had already been filmed, so it's being projected, and she is recording her dialogue over the projection. And she says originally, he says, "You could stop this." And she says, "Stop what?" And then she says, "If you don't want to watch, close your eyes. Go sit down with the other elders." I said, "Wait a minute." He's not Helen Keller. He's supposed to close his eyes and then go sit down with the other elders. It should say, "Go sit down with the other elders. If you don't want to watch, close your eyes." And so she redid it. My contribution.
And did that fit? Because she already shot it. She's got to match the lip.
But we made it fit.
And it worked.
She's good at that.
Wow. Excellent. Who knew? Next question.
Hi. First, I want to say that a Lois Lowry book never felt like required reading. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
My question is for Jeff, as obviously such a huge fan of the book. You know, we're talking about movie adaptations and changes. Sadly, the bathtub scene had to be cut, but was there anything in particular that you fought for, or 20 years ago you saw it a certain way and wanted to stay that way?
The age of the kids, you know, I was one of those ones who said, no, we got to keep them, 12, and I was, really, I came to a point in, when I had to decide whether I was going to stay on board or just, wish everybody good luck, because I knew it wasn't going to be how I pictured it. And as I said before, one time I was thinking about directing it, so I had a lot of opinions. As the dude would say, that's just my opinion, man. But I had a lot of them, I had a lot of them. And then I decided, sometimes when I come to forks in the road like that, I think about, I kind of project myself in the future, and I try to imagine what this would be like if I turned this down, or if I turned it down, it just didn't feel right at all. So I decided to just jump on board, knowing that it was going to be very different, but I was going to kind of roll with it and, kind of take it as it comes. And I knew there were talented people involved, and just to kind of go with it. And then this guy shows up, and this beautiful lady here, and they did, I could tell early on, oh yeah, I was wrong.
Okay.
I was wrong. It's wonderful to be wrong, isn't it?
Yes.
Because there's so many other things you say, well, maybe I was wrong about that, too. And then sometimes it's,
And do you know, and maybe Nikki is the one to ask this of, why they decided to make the kids older?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons, I think, right, Nick, is just a financial thing. If you got a young kid, you can't work him as hard. And man, we worked our butts off on this one.
Meaning your hours.
Yeah.
The hours that you
And
have.
maybe segueing from that, we should talk about what it's like to work in a movie with a lot of babies.
Yeah, well.
Oh, and this baby,
that.
man, talking about acting.
Poor
lessons.
Brenton had to carry a baby around for a very long time.
Yeah.
How many different babies? Was this a case where you had like triplets and they would swap
No,
them
there
out?
was twins.
Twins.
William and Alexander?
James and Alex.
James and Alex.
Those babies, they did such a wonderful job. Aren't they great? I mean, as far as just acting, but there's no acting. That's what they tell you, when you're doing a movie. They say, don't act it, just kind of do it,
Yeah.
And babies, they have that so natural. It's really an acting lesson to watch how effortless,
If you want someone to play a baby, hire an actual baby. They know it.
But in addition to the baby Gabe, whom Jonas takes when he leaves the community, there are a lot of other babies because Jonas and Fiona work in the nurturing center. And so there are many bassinets filled with babies, and there were many women in Cape Town willing to bring their babies to be in those bassinets. And there were also, should we let them know, there were some fake babies.
My first acting role was
I like the gasp for the fake babies. People were like,
fake babies?
Actually, Meryl said at the end of the film we should have said no actual babies were harmed during the filming of this movie.
My first role was when I was a baby, 6 months old, and I was in this movie with wonderful actress Jane Greer. John Cromwell was directing. My parents were. I'm consulting. I got into a long story. I'll see if I can make this short.
Were you as good as the baby in this movie?
I don't. No. I have a lot to learn from this child. But they needed a baby, and I was kind of a happy baby, but the baby in this one needed to cry. And so, unlike our babies, my mother told the actress, Jane Greer, oh, just pinch him. He'll cry.
that still work?
So now we cut about 35 years later, and I'm in another movie with Jane Greer, a remake of a great movie she made with Robert Mitchum called Out of the Past. Ours was called Against All Odds. And she's playing her character in the originals. She's playing her mother now, and I say, Jane, will you just give me, I'm having some emotional problem here. Give me a little pinch. Just kind of get me going a little bit. It's a long story, sorry.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you guys all so much. You've been a great audience. Thank you to the makers and the stars of The Giver.